Unexplainable encounters, 3 spine-chilling true tales of sinister eyes watching you. Rachel shivered as she tucked her kids into bed, the calm of her suburban home contrasting sharply with the tension creeping into her bones. It was a serene evening, with gentle laughter from the neighbors mingling with the soft rustling of leaves outside. Yet, as she glanced out the window into the darkness, a knot of anxiety tightened in her chest. They were out there. Watching. She could feel it, pressing down like a weight, chilling the air around her. As a nurse working the night shift, Rachel often found herself navigating the silence of empty streets after long days filled with the sweetness of playdates and laughter. But lately, her peaceful evening walks had begun to feel like a gauntlet. Each night the friendly homes turned into lurking shadows, and the streetlights blinked and faded, almost as if giving up on illuminating her path. The familiar route transformed, twisting her sense of safety into something frightful. One night, after a particularly draining shift, Rachel found a note slipped beneath her doormat when she returned home. It was brief but harrowing. "I'm watching you, Rachel. I know when you leave, I know where you go." The words sank deep into her mind, reverberating with terror. Who was this person? How did they know so much about her? Panic surged like a tidal wave, and she wrestled with the urge to dismiss it as an ill-timed prank, but what if it wasn't? Days passed, and the notes became relentless. Each one darkened her thoughts with escalating details, things only someone close could possibly observe. Rachel's heart raced with the paranoia gnawing at her. She couldn't shake the feeling that neighbors she'd once trusted were now casting glances filled with judgment and confusion behind her back. Was it all in her head? The police dismissed her fears, their shrugging indifference only fueling her dread. Were they all complicit in this nightmare? Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Rachel found herself prowling the streets at night, reluctantly pulling away the layers of comfort that had once wrapped her in safety. Every shadow felt alive, every rustle in the bushes a potential threat. It drove her, with panic clenched in her throat, toward the abandoned school at the edge of town, long forgotten but steeped in rumors and the echoes of lost children. She needed to confront the truth hidden beneath the eerie walls. As she approached the school, rain began to pour, masking her frantic breathing. The darkness wrapped around her, thick and invasive, amplifying her pounding heart. Faces she knew, friends, neighbors now flickered like images in a haunted dream, too close yet shrouded in mystery. Something primal urged her to run, but she was rooted, trapped by an unseen force drawing her closer to the darkened building. Heavy breaths betrayed her as she crossed the threshold, standing alone in the stillness that felt almost alive. The familiar turned grotesque as eyes peered out from the shadow, faces she once thought were filled with kindness now twisted into something sinister. The oppressive atmosphere throbbed, and in that moment, she understood, the very people she relied on might just be waiting, watching, and wanting her to join the darkness that consumed this forsaken place. Was there anyone left she could trust? The sound of footsteps echoed behind her, and her blood turned to ice. The chase was just beginning. Rachel's heart thundered in her chest as she spun around, the footsteps growing louder, reverberating ominously against the dank walls of the school. Shadows danced just beyond her peripheral vision, taunting her with glimpses of movement. The once comforting familiarity of her neighborhood now felt grotesque, invaded by terror that wormed its way into her psyche. A shiver shot down her spine. She wasn't just being watched anymore, she was being hunted. "Who's there?" She called out, her voice trembling, echoing against the peeling paint and cracked plaster. Silence swallowed her words, thick and suffocating. Every instinct urged her to flee, she wasn't safe here. Yet, something held her in place, a magnetic pull of fear and curiosity intertwined. Suddenly, a figure loomed at the far end of the hall. Rachel squinted through the dim light that barely penetrated the darkness. It was a silhouette, not recognizable but eerily familiar. Her breath hitched. It was not just one figure. Shapes hovered just behind the ghosts of her neighborhood, creeping closer, their eyes glinting like shards of glass, hungry and unwavering. A chill coursed through her as she stepped back, heart racing. "Stay away!" she shouted, but her words felt feeble and lost. In that moment, she could feel the weight of every note, every unspoken threat crashing down around her. These faces, once comforting, had transformed into a twisted collage of her own fears. Was her life really dictated by the terror lurking here? One figure broke off from the group, stepping forward. The rain outside intensified, drumming against the roof like an impending doom. Rachel pressed her back against the cold wall, her pulse matching the relentless thump of rain. "I know you," she whispered, fear clawing at her throat. It was Sarah, the friendly mother from a few doors down, a person she had shared cups of coffee with and exchanged pleasantries. Yet now, she bore an expression more terrifying than any horror movie villain, menace wrapped in a smile. "Oh, Rachel," Sarah cooed, her voice dripping with sweet malice. "We've been waiting for you. You shouldn't have come here alone." The group behind Sarah shifted, snickers erupting in the eerie silence. Shadows twisted into menacing shapes lining the walls, as if the very building had come alive with the malice of its past. Rachel's mind raced. They couldn't be serious. She had trusted these people. "I don't understand." "Why?" Rachel gasped, scrambling for answers, her world suddenly spinning out of control. "Oh, but understanding means nothing when you're part of the story," Sarah replied, stepping closer, her eyes glinting with a dark desire. "We want you with us, Rachel. You're one of us now." Before Rachel could respond, a heavy door creaked open at the end of the hall, revealing an inky darkness that beckoned with the weight of unspeakable terror. It felt like the maw of a beast waiting to swallow her whole. Panic surged through her veins, propelling her into action. She turned and ran, her footsteps pounding against the floor as she sprinted down the corridor. Each glance back showed the figures closing in, their laughter echoing maniacally as if relishing her fear. Desperate, she made for the exit, but the path twisted like a living thing. Doors that should have led her outside seemed to vanish, replaced by walls that pulsed with malicious intent. Had they trapped her? This was no longer just about anonymity, it was about her very essence. Terror locked in her throat, Rachel barreled through the maze of the school, the darkness closing around her like a snake suffocating its prey. She couldn't let them take her, not like this. Every instinct screamed at her to find the light, to escape whatever trap was being laid. Suddenly, she stumbled upon an open door, faint light spilling through. She dashed through, only to find herself in a dilapidated classroom. The air was thick with mildew and despair. Desks were overturned, and dust motes hung in the sun's feeble rays. With her back pressed against the door, she strained to hear the sinister laughter getting closer, the sound wrapping around her like cold fingers. The door rattled ominously as they pounded against it, but she wasn't out of options yet. She saw a single window, cracked and dirted. Could she make it? She glanced back, the figures moving in on her like a predator cornering its prey. Rachel had only one choice. She threw herself at the window, pain exploding in her side as glass shattered around her. She gasped, the adrenaline pushing her onward into the night. But what awaited her outside? The street was dark, eerily quiet. A moment of hesitation flooded her mind, but she could feel their eyes, lurking, watching her every move. Were they truly only a step behind? Before she could catch her breath, she took off down the street, her pulse thrumming, the shadows chasing her into the depths of the night. But as she looked back, tangled thoughts raced through her mind. Were they simply watching her while she ran, or was this all part of a bigger plan, a plan she was just beginning to unravel? And who else out there was part of their game? Somehow, Rachel knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Sneaking glances behind her, she took a deep breath and whispered, "I will find you." But would her resolve lead her deeper into the darkness where their hunger lingered? The chill of the night air pierced through Rachel's skin as she sprinted down the street, her lungs burning with every breath. She glanced over her shoulder, and the figures from the school were shadows fading into the darkness, but she felt their presence still. Their laughter echoed in her mind like a haunting melody that she was desperate to escape. Desperation drove her forward, her heart hammering against her ribcage as she dashed past the flickering streetlights. The world around her seemed to twist and warp, familiar landmarks warping into grotesque parodies. The houses she once knew felt alive, each window an eye watching her intently, every doorway a gaping maw waiting to swallow her whole. She turned down an alley, the rough pavement biting into her feet as she pushed harder, seeking refuge. "What do they want from me?" she panted, the question swirling like a ghost in her mind. She couldn't shake the feeling that the walls themselves were listening, eager to share her secrets with her pursuers. Rachel found herself at a dead end, a brick wall rising ominously before her. Panic bubbled within her, but there was no time to think. She slammed her fists against the cold, unyielding surface, searching for an escape. But there was nothing. The darkness behind her gathered like a storm cloud, every instinct screaming at her to run. Suddenly, she caught sight of a narrow gap in the wall, a forgotten passageway she thought had been sealed long ago. There was no choice, she squeezed through, feeling the rough edges gnaw at her skin. On the other side, a musty smell hit her. The air was stifling, thick with memories of neglect. As she emerged into what appeared to be an old storage room, rays of dim light flickered from a single, grime-coated bulb hanging overhead. Old crates littered the floor, broken furniture made the room feel claustrophobic. Her heartbeat slowed, though apprehension gnawed at her. Silence enveloped her, but she knew that quiet was just a mask for lurking horrors. With bated breath, she stepped further inside and scanned the area. The soft shuffle of a footfall at the far end of the room broke the silence. Her pulse quickened as she turned to face the source. In that split second, a tall figure emerged from the shadows. Rachel, the voice was a grating whisper that sent a shiver down her spine. It was so familiar yet terrifyingly distorted. "We thought we lost you." Her breath caught in her throat as she recognized the face. Tom, another neighbor, his features twisted into something grotesque, eyes wide and gleaming like predators in the moonlight. "You shouldn't have run. You could have joined us," he continued, a sickly smile creeping across his lips. Rachel's mind reeled. "What have you done to them?" "To Sarah?" The words slipped through her trembling lips. "Oh, they're fine," he replied, that same unsettling grin never wavering. "They're with us. They always will be. And now so will you." Without waiting for a response, he advanced toward her, the shadows dancing around him. Rachel's instincts kicked in again. She turned on her heels and darted through another doorway, leaving him behind. But hearing his taunting laughter echoing in the close space, winding through the crumbling corridors, panic and dread energized her movements. She could feel the darkness pressing in, like a weight on her shoulders. But Tom's voice trailed behind her like a haunting soundtrack. The others were waiting. The walls of the school had shifted their focus. It was closing in, eager to keep her. She reached another door, a wooden thing barely hanging on its hinges. Pushing it open, the chilly breeze greeted her. She stumbled outside and was met with a sliver of moonlight cutting through the darkness, illuminating what lay ahead, a twisted version of her neighborhood. Same houses, same trees, but somehow wrong. They were not her neighbors anymore. "Hurry, Rachel," a whisper called from behind a bush, but she couldn't tell if it was friendly or malicious. It felt like a trap, another way to lure her into their snare. Racing down the street, every cell in her body screamed for her to escape. But she realized something chilling: there were no sirens, no help, no one to turn to. The shadows had claimed her neighborhood, and they were hungry. In that moment of clarity, one harrowing thought consumed her. What if the horror wasn't just the darkness chasing her, but the insidious transformation waiting for her if she got caught? As she rounded the corner, Rachel felt the ground rumbling beneath her. It was a perverse warning, a signal that whatever hunted her had made their move. She had to unravel the truth of her own neighborhood before it unraveled her. In the distance, laughter ignited in the air again. It was the laughter of her neighbors, but thick with something sinister. With every step, she knew she was racing against time. What secrets were buried beneath the surface of her community, and could she uncover them before they consumed her too? Rachel stumbled through the moonlit street, her heart pounding as she wrestled with fear. She could feel the weight of the shadows closing in, the air thick with dread. Every echo of laughter felt like a sharp knife, cutting through her already frayed nerves. As she ran, she caught fleeting glimpses of eyes watching her from the darkened windows of her neighbors' homes. They felt hollow and knowing, as if the essence of her old life was turning against her. A shudder coursed through her, and she dashed past the mailboxes that had once brought her comfort. A late-night letter, a package from a friend. Those days felt like a distant memory now. Up ahead, she noticed a figure standing at the end of the street, half hidden by shadows. It looked like Sarah, her childhood friend, the last connection to a time before this nightmare began. Hope flickered within her, and she called out, "Sarah." The figure turned slowly, the moonlight catching glimpses of familiar features that began to warp, distorting from her friend's sweet face into something harsh and twisted. "Rachel," it hissed, voice dripping with malice. "Why do you run? Join us." Rachel's stomach dropped. This wasn't Sarah. She recognized the tone, a sick mocking of her friend's warmth. Fear clawed at her throat, and she turned to bolt in the opposite direction just as shadows beckoned hungrily from the trees that began to close in, branches clawing towards her. Feeling the panic rising, Rachel sprinted into another alley, praying for the safety of darkness. It swallowed her, but inside it felt alive, breathing down her neck. The old brick walls towered overhead, almost leaning in to catch a glimpse. She pressed herself against the cold surface, trying to merge with the shadows. The ground felt uneven, and as she moved cautiously forward, she kicked something, a small, rusted toy. The echo of metal on pavement startled her, and the cacophony of a child's giggle danced through the air. It was chilling, not pure but disturbed, as if something sinister had taken over. "Rachel," it called. "Let us play." Nerves shot through her. The voices of children should have brought comfort, not terror. She took a shaky breath and moved forward, her feet heavy, dread thickening the air. Behind her, the laughter swelled, a grotesque symphony, and she recognized it. Tom, Sarah, all her friends, now orchestrating the terror that chased her. Suddenly, the alley seemed alive with silhouettes shifting and writhing, faces deformed into grotesque replicas of those she loved. She stumbled backward, her mind racing. "You're not them," she gasped, the reality crashing down. "You're monsters." "No, sweetheart," a voice echoed, smoother than any she knew, slinking from the shadows. "We are home." The word lingered in the air, a cool hand gripping Rachel's heart. She couldn't tell if it was an invitation or a warning. Any sense of safety eroded away, leaving her bare and exposed. She darted from the alley into the street, desperation driving her, but the ground quaked beneath her, a horrible rhythmic pulsing, as if the earth itself were alive and hostile. The laughter rose again, vibrating through her bones. A figure emerged from the darkness. It stepped forward, closer, revealing eyes that glowed, hungry and eager. There was no mistaking it now, it was her father. But the warmth in his smile had long been replaced with a chilling hunger. "Join us, Rachel. You're running away from home." The realization hit her. Home was no longer a safe haven. It was a snare, woven from the very souls she loved. Behind him, shadows twisted and merged into a writhing mass, undulating like a living entity ready to strike. "Help me!" she screamed, but the words fell flat against the canopy of others, all echoing the same words, "We're here for you." Panic surged as she turned to run again, but the laughter, now a sinister chorus, engulfed her, urging her toward the darkened figures waiting, hungry for her to give them what they sought. In that moment, Rachel felt a sinister power drawing her back, and her will to survive clashed with something deeper, a lure that promised acceptance, connection. Could she resist the pull? Or had she already become one of them, waiting to embrace the darkness? The shadows closed in tighter as Rachel raced towards a glimmer of hope, a light flickering in the distance. But what awaited her at the source? Only more unanswered questions and the chilling knowledge that her time was running out. Rachel's heart hammered in her chest as she sprinted toward the flickering light. The laughter followed her, a relentless chorus that echoed through the night like a haunting melody. With every step, she felt the ground thrum beneath her, the very earth pulsating with a malignant hunger. As she emerged from the shadows, the light revealed itself to be an old street lamp, dim and faltering. Its light cast long shadows, but there was something comforting about it, a stark contrast to the darkness enveloping her. She skidded to a stop, breathing heavily, and glanced back over her shoulder. The figures were gone, but she could sense them lurking, waiting just beyond the edge of illumination. "Keep moving," she whispered to herself, anxiety tightening her throat. But where to? Home? No, not home, not anymore. Shivers raced along her spine as she stood transfixed by the light. It flickered again, as if responding to her own uncertainty. She stepped closer, drawn to its warmth, but the air around her chilled alarmingly. Her breath came out in visible puffs, and she could feel the presence of the shadows as they clawed at the edges of her sanity. "Rachel," a voice drifted from behind her, smothered in a thick haze of malice. "Rachel, where are you going?" The familiar whisper sent ice through her veins. She didn't need to turn around to know who it was. It was her mother, but not the mother she remembered. This voice was thick with dark promise, twisting the love it once held into something grotesque. "Don't listen," Rachel shouted, desperation tinging her voice. "You're not her. You can't fool me." Laughter erupted, cruel and mocking, filling the narrow street. Rachel's heart sank. They were everywhere, hidden among the shadows, transforming her memories into horrors, making mockeries of her past. The brief flicker of light in front of her felt like a cruel joke now, as shadows danced around her, pulling her from all sides. "Come to us, Rachel," the voice cooed. "You can have it all back, you just have to accept who we are now." The ground trembled again, a deep, resonating thrum building beneath her. There was no safe path, no escape from what awaited her. Every option felt like a trap closing in, every breath an invitation for the shadows to swallow her whole. She looked around wildly, searching for another means to escape. The alley branched off to her left, deeper into darkness. It beckoned seductively, tempting her to believe there might be a way out. Yet, all she could hear was that awful laughter, curdling in the air as she took uncertain steps away from the lamp. "Scatter!" she urged herself, forcing her legs to move faster as panic ignited a fight-or-flight response deep within. "Just get away." But with each step, the shadows began to simplify, melding into familiar shapes, friends' faces twisted into malevolence, taunting her with eyes that glowed with a darkness she'd never seen before. "You can't run forever, Rachel. We're waiting." Something deep inside told her that she couldn't go back. She had to confront this terror if she were ever to find peace. Heart racing, she lunged toward the alley. As she sprinted along the unseen path, she could feel the shadows tightening around her, wrapping her in a suffocating grip. Then, against the oppressive darkness, she spotted another fragment of light up ahead, a doorway, maybe, or perhaps a window. Hope stirred, but it was almost drowned out by the cacophony of the shadows closing in. With no time to spare, Rachel sprinted straight for it, fear propelling her like a bullet. Just as she reached the source of light, a voice sliced through the night, sharp as glass. "You can't escape, Rachel. You belong with us." Rachel grasped the edge of the frame and flung herself through, tumbling into the glow. Gasping for breath, she landed on the other side, adrenaline surging through her. But when she looked up, her blood ran cold. She found herself in a dimly lit room filled with familiar objects, childhood toys, family photographs, all twisted and garbled. The sense of home flooded her senses. "Welcome home, sweetheart." came that sickly sweet voice again, now echoing in the small space. Rachel's breath hitched in her throat. She had fled the shadows, only to walk right into their heart, and she wasn't alone. As she tried to scramble back, the door slammed shut behind her, a loud clap that echoed in her ears. Her friends surrounded her, their faces blank and smiling in that distorted way she couldn't process. "Someone's finally back to stay," they chorused, voices weaving together in a chilling harmony. What had she done? In her desperate bid to escape, had she just sealed her fate? And what of those figures still lurking outside, whispering in the dark? The urge to run surged again, but there was no place left to run. The shadows had found her and they weren't letting go. Rachel stumbled back, her heart quickening as the chorus of distorted voices grew stronger, their laughter tightening around her like a vice. The room felt too small, the walls closing in, as if they were mocking her progress. She glanced around frantically, each familiar object turned grotesque in the dim light. The doll's eyes seemed to follow her every move, reflecting her own fear back at her, twisted into something malevolent. "Please let me go," she gasped, her voice trembling. But as the words left her lips, the group stepped closer, their smiles stretching unnaturally wide, teeth glinting in the weak light like shards of glass. "No one goes anywhere," one of them said, a boy she used to play with. His face was unrecognizable, molded by an eerie glow. "You should be known better than to come back." Panic surged through her. They weren't the friends she once knew, something dark had claimed them. The familiarity of the room turned suffocating, a mockery of her childhood that now felt like a cruel trap. She pressed her back against the door, but it was solid, unyielding. There was no escape. "Why are you doing this?" Rachel pleaded, desperation clawing at her. The shadows in her memory had twisted everything she loved into a nightmare. She couldn't understand how they could stand there, mocking her return. What had changed? "We're whole now," they chimed in unison, a sickening rhythm that echoed in her brain. "You can be whole too, Rachel. Just let go, accept us." Their gestures were inviting, but the decay in their faces told a different story. The room pulsated with malevolent energy, and she felt nauseous, her stomach turning. A whisper brushed against her ear, chilling and insidiously sweet. "You've always belonged with us, deep down." "No!" Rachel screamed, shaking her head violently. Her body trembled, instinctively pushing her into the wall as if it could shield her from their encroaching presence. Her mind raced, searching for a memory, a moment that could drown out the laughter, the promises, the oppressive weight of expectation. "Remember the club we made?" One girl crooned, her voice dripping with syrupy nostalgia. "Our secrets. Our dreams. We can have them all back." The shadows twisted again, morphing into painful reminders of simpler days, each gleeful memory punctuated by a piercing shriek of laughter, and as they spoke, the walls around her began to shift, transforming into a twisting mirror of her life, the innocent past, now corrupted. Rachel felt her resolve waver, a flicker of the warmth she once knew battling against the bitter cold of reality. "What do you want from me?" she gasped, the words barely escaping her lips. There was a terrifying hunger in their eyes, a primal longing that made her skin crawl. "Join us," they echoed, fingers reaching out, beckoning her to fold into their chaos. "Become truly one." That seductive promise snaked through Rachel's heart, igniting a conflict that threatened to tear her apart. Memories of laughter swirled with visions of darkness. Could she give in? Could she really embrace the shadows that had already laid their claim? An opalescent darkness rippled through the air, and Rachel's world began to spin. The weight of their expectations bore down on her. She could feel the sinister threads of their wishes weaving around her, pulling tighter with each breath she took. "No, no!" she cried, forcing herself to think clearly. In a desperate, instinctual move, she lunged for the window at the far side of the room. The glass was cold and sharp, memories pressed against her mind. "Leave us!" she shouted, the anger and fear fueling her fight. And as her palm struck the cold surface, the glass shattered, sending shards spiraling into the dimness around her. The laughter stopped, silence filled the room, thick and suffocating, but it didn't last. A low growl resonated, vibrating through the walls. The shadows recoiled, forming a vortex around Rachel, squeezing her like a vice. The familiar shapes shifted, becoming monstrous in their fury. Foolish girl. You can't fight who you are. As they lunged forward, Rachel felt the weight of her past collide with the present. She couldn't hold back anymore. With a primal scream, she leaped through the window, shards raining down around her like twisted stars. What awaited her beyond that shattering glass? The darkness loomed, hungry and waiting. The air outside was colder, sharper. It tore at her skin, that sudden exposure to the world beyond the window. Rachel tumbled onto the ground, shards of glass littering the earth around her, glittering like malicious diamonds. The night was thick with shadows that moved aside, only to watch her, waiting for her next move. She pushed herself up, wincing as pieces of glass embedded into her palms. The world around her felt alive, pulsing with a sinister energy. The laughter, that horrible laughter, echoed in the background, a reminder of what she had escaped, but it lurked still, claws sharpened, ready to dig in once more. Rachel. A voice pierced the darkness, a real voice. It was familiar but laced with panic. She turned to see her friend Lisa rushing towards her, hair wild, eyes wide. I saw you. What happened? It's not safe. Rachel gasped, her breath ragged, heart pounding like a drum. They're not who they were, Lisa. Panic surged again, twisting her insides. She could still feel the weight of those eyes, the hunger they bore. She looked back towards the house, half expecting to see those familiar faces morphing into something monstrous in the moonlight. Lisa reached for her arm, but Rachel jerked away, every nerve ending screaming for her friend to understand. You can't go back. A snap interrupted her, the sound of branches cracking echoed through the stillness, followed by a heavy silence that felt almost deafening. Rachel's gaze darted to the dense trees lining the property, shadows stretching like fingers reaching out toward her. Rachel, please. Slow down. Lisa begged, fear woven through her voice. But Rachel couldn't slow down. In that instant, everything about the world shifted, the air thickened, laden with malice. She felt eyes watching her from the woods, burrowing into her skin. They were out there, those twisted faces lurking beyond the trees, breeding their wicked thoughts into the night. With a deafening roar, something began to emerge from the darkness, twisting the branches behind it as it took form. A figure loomed, faintly illuminated under the brittle glow of the moon. Rachel's heart sank when she recognized the twisted features of another childhood friend. Michael. His eyes glowed with a depthless black, mirroring the void that now seemed to envelop him. They want you back, Rachel. He called, a voice that should have brought comfort only dripped with venom. You can't escape who you really are. Join us. The words were a chant, a warning, a promise that filled the air with dread. Run. Rachel screamed, grabbing Lisa's wrist, pulling her away from the sight. They dashed toward the distant streetlights, the small glimmers of safety illuminating their path. But behind them, the laughter returned, now shrill and resonant, echoing between the trees like a warped melody, but as they reached the main road, Lisa stumbled, losing her footing. Rachel, we can't just leave them. She cried, desperation in her eyes. Rachel shook her head violently. You don't understand. There suddenly, Michael lunged from the darkness, a sickly grin spread wide across his face. You think you can run? You belong with us, Rachel. You're one of us. The end of the street loomed ahead, but with each step, Rachel felt the distance closing in. The shadows from the woods twirled around them, their laughter reverberating in her ears, rattling her bones. Rachel. Lisa cried again, her voice a mix of panic and confusion. Think about the memories. We had so much fun. Rachel bit her lip, torn between the shadows calling her name and the warmth of friendship she desperately clung to. The heaviness in the air thickened, and she could feel the creatures drawing closer, tempted by the glimmer of her fear. In that moment of indecision, Rachel made her choice. With a swift motion, she dragged Lisa toward the fading lights and shouted, "We have to keep running. Don't look back." But she could feel their eyes burning into her back, the whispers swirling like a storm around them. As they dashed into the light, her breath caught, a chilling realization sinking in. If she outran them, what would happen next? Behind the safety of illumination, the shadows loomed larger, waiting, plotting. They wouldn't give up easily. And just then, she heard the faint rustle of leaves shifting once more, a sinister promise that she would never truly escape what awaited them in the light, when darkness was only a heartbeat away. Adrenaline surged through Rachel's veins as her feet pounded against the pavement, the streetlights flickering ominously above them. Lisa's breath was hot and frantic beside her, echoing the panic swirling inside Rachel. She glanced back, dread tightening her throat. The shadows shifted, coiling with intent, and she could still see Michael's twisted grin shining in the dimness, a ghastly reminder of what chased them. "You can't keep running forever." His voice rang out, a haunting echo that dripped with malice. It made Rachel's heart race faster, as if it were trying to outrun the very words threatening her. She forced herself to look ahead, biting down hard against the overwhelming urge to glance back again. The road stretched before them, bordered by high hedges, but darkness loomed, hungry and relentless. "There's a diner just a little further," Rachel gasped, jerking her head in the direction she remembered. "We can make it. We'll be safe there." Lisa nodded, but fear clouded her eyes. What if they follow us? What if she trailed off, the weight of unsaid words hanging heavily between them? They picked up speed, the lights of the diner flickering like a beacon as they dashed towards it. Rachel reached for the door, heart thudding in her ears, but the coffee-stained glass remained stubbornly shut. She hammered against it, panic spilling over. "Open up. Please." Her voice cracked, unrecognizable against the night's foreboding silence. Inside, people sat in semicircular booths, oblivious to the danger lurking outside, but no one moved to help. The dull glow of greasy neon lights cast grotesque shadows across their faces, twisting friendly features into the grotesque semblance of laughter. Rachel pulled at the door again, desperation clawing at her. "Someone help us." Then she felt Lisa's hand tightening on her arm, shaking her lightly. "Rachel. We need to go." Lisa's voice was a desperate whisper, but it cut through Rachel's frantic thoughts. "What?" Rachel spun around, her heart dropping at the sight of Michael, now mere steps away, flanked by familiar silhouettes emerging from the slicing night. They were her friends, twisted and wrong, their features grotesquely familiar but tainted. "They've found us." Rachel's voice quivered, an icy grip of dread coiling around her spine as she turned to face the door again. It still wouldn't budge. "Why are you fighting?" Michael said, a chilling smile stretching across his face. "This is where you belong. Come home." Behind him, the other figures nodded, their mouths twisted into that same sickening grin, a false semblance of joy dripping with something darker. The laughter rose once again, echoing around them like a sick song, filling the diner with foul air. "Run, Rachel!" Lisa screamed, her voice cutting through the haze of fear as she thrust her shoulder against the heavy door, but it didn't budge. The hands pressed against it, whispering sweet nothings of betrayal and loyalty, love intermingled with fury, calling them back to the darkness. "Stop!" Rachel snapped, barreling away from the door, determination blazing inside her. The flickering lights were no longer enough. "We have to get out of here." With every breath, Rachel could feel their presence closing in, hungry eyes locked onto them, waiting for that moment of weakness. She threw herself upwards, body colliding with a window, desperately trying to push it open. It resisted at first, but with a rusty whine, it finally surrendered and cracked open. "Out!" she shouted, fear propelling her. One leg swung over, then the other, forcing her trembling body through as the laughter drew closer, echoing within the diner. She landed hard on the ground, the cold biting into her skin, but there wasn't time to feel it. She yanked Lisa out, who stumbled beside her, trying to regain her balance. Together, they took off down the alleyway next to the diner, the familiar glow of the town fading behind them as shadows soared. "Where do we go?" Lisa gasped, her eyes wide with terror. Rachel didn't have the answer. The darkness was a predator awaiting its prey. Each corner they turned revealing only more night. She could hear whispers, the cacophony of her friend's betrayal swirling in her mind, yet she pushed it aside. "There has to be an end," Rachel declared, though doubt gnawed at the edges of her resolve. They turned a final corner, and she skidded to a halt. Ahead, an old playground stood, the rusting swings creaking in the cold night air, bathed in moonlight. But something wasn't right. The laughter had changed, now more sinister, more real. "Rachel, what if they're already here?" Lisa asked, voice quivering. Rachel looked at the familiar shapes of the twisted playground, a chill settling into her bones. A teeter-totter stood ominously, like a throne, shadows flanking it with grotesque figures blended in the darkness. Then, a voice broke through the stillness, calling her name softly, invitingly. "Join us, Rachel." It was Michael, but it echoed with a finality that sent shivers racing down her spine. The distance between her and those monstrous figures shrank, the urge to return to the darkness pulling at her heart. "We can't stand here," Rachel shouted, but as she turned to run, she felt the ground beneath her tremble, shadows reaching up like claws wanting to pull her back down. "Will you run, Rachel? Or will you finally embrace what you truly are?" Those words hung in the air, lingering, taunting. Rachel gripped Lisa's hand, squeezing tightly as the darkness beckoned. But as she stepped forward, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was running straight into their trap. What awaited them on the other side? Would they find freedom or the very end they feared? The playground loomed ahead, a ghostly shell of the joy it once promised. The moon bathed the rusted slide in an eerie glow, while the swing swayed ever so slightly, as if moved by an unseen hand. Rachel tightened her grip on Lisa's hand, her heart racing as she scanned the darkness. "Rachel, they're here," Lisa stammered, eyes darting nervously, scanning the shadows around them. Ignoring the rising panic within her, Rachel pushed on, driven by sheer instinct. "We need to find somewhere safe." Suddenly, a sharp laugh echoed through the air, the sound manufactured yet chillingly familiar. Rachel staggered, her breath hitching. "Michael! Stop playing games." Panic twisted her stomach into knots. The swing set creaked again, and the laugh came closer, a sickening mimicry of their past moments together, turned grotesque. "Join us, Rachel." The words dripped with temptation, pouring over her like thick, suffocating oil. Rachel's mind raced. They had to leave, there was no safe haven here. Yet, the air was charged with the weight of familiar presences. Figures flitted at the edges of her vision, transforming shadows into forms she knew too well. They weren't just illusions, they were distorted remnants of her friends, the friendships that had once felt so comforting. "Just a little closer, Rach," Michael called, his voice slicing through the tension. "Why resist? You know you want this." Lisa whimpered, pulling Rachel's hand tighter, panic radiating from her trembling frame. "We have to get away from him." Rachel's thoughts were jumbled, caught up in the counterpoint of love and betrayal. But each pulse in her heart urged her to fight against the gravitational pull of their voices, against the chains of familiarity shackling her will. "No. We're not staying. We can't." With a sudden burst of resolve, she jerked away and took off past the playground, the shadows releasing their grip momentarily. Behind her, the echoes of laughter twisted into a cacophony of mockery, chasing her down the darkened road. The distant sound of a train whistle filled the air, a reminder of civilization, and Rachel's mind locked onto it. "There's a train track nearby. We can get to the station." But the words evaporated as the ground turned soft beneath her feet, a sudden sinkhole opening up at her side. She stumbled, knee hitting the ground as she fought to keep her balance. Lisa. Rachel. Lisa's voice trembled, panic lacing her words like sharp needles. She landed beside Rachel, pulling her hand as the world threatened to swallow them whole. An unnatural chill coated the air as dreadful whispers swirled around them. It was as if every shadow had come to life, dancing cruelly on the edges of their vision. With a frantic shove, Rachel pushed them back onto the path. This way. The sound of soft whispers morphed into rushed footsteps, and the figures emerged from the darkness, faces of friends, classmates, all warped by fear, their promising smiles twisted into expressions of hatred and despair. Everything betrayed her, her heart clenched, her stomach turned. That's it, Rachel. Michael sang, his tone shifting to something sickeningly tender. Come play with us forever. You belong in the dark. Rachel looked at Lisa, terrible horror reflected back in her eyes. Run! She screamed, adrenaline pumping through her, propelling them forward. They fled down the street, the train tracks and escape beyond them becoming a beacon of hope, but the shadows slithered closer, always a heartbeat behind. No matter where you run, we'll always find you. Came a chorus of voices, rising and falling like a sick melody, making Rachel's skin crawl. The air thickened, troubles invading her lungs, suffocating her almost as if the darkness held a hand over her mouth. Every stride they took seemed to make the shadows surge, creeping ever closer. Rachel wasn't sure how much longer they could keep this up, the dread pooling in her stomach like acid. Over there! Lisa shouted, pointing toward a narrow alley, dark and uninviting. In desperation, Rachel led them toward it. We can hide just for a minute. But as they entered the alley, a gut-wrenching feeling washed over her. Something felt wrong, too quiet, too still. Wait, do you hear that? Rachel whispered, eyes widening as a low, mocking hum began to resonate in the darkness. The figures stopped at the threshold, watching with eerie stillness. Rachel's breathing quickened. They were waiting for her, for Lisa. It was a thrill of dread, an impending revelation lurking like a predator in the shadows. As the hum grew louder, Rachel felt overwhelming fear clench at her stomach. What are they planning? She wondered, panic threatening to drown her. But there was no time to linger on thoughts. A flash of movement flickered in her periphery, and she turned to see a wide-eyed stranger standing at the end of the alley, silhouetted against the dim light. Help us! Rachel shouted, instinctively reaching out. Instead of running to their aid, the figure erupted into laughter, light glinting off a wicked smile. The voice was all too familiar, echoing through the dark, suffocating space. Rachel, it taunted, fingers clawing through the air, you're never getting away from us. With dread pooling in her bones, Rachel realized it wasn't just Michael who waited for her, it was every shadow that had ever chased her. The ground shook, shadows thick and alive, ready to consume them whole. What was this darkness? How could they escape it? Would they even have the strength to fight back against their own past? The answer slithered just out of reach, but Rachel's heart knew one thing: the worst horrors were yet to come. Rachel stumbled back, sweat soaking her shirt as the shadows danced with wicked intent. Every familiar face twisted into a smirk, eyes glinting with a predatory hunger. Lisa had gone pale beside her, fear written all over her features, and Rachel desperately squeezed her hand, as if their connection could anchor them against the encroaching darkness. Stay close! Rachel shouted, dread swelling. She turned, pulling Lisa behind her, rushing deeper into the alley, desperate for escape. Each step echoed, taunting them with the knowledge that time was running out. Whispers swirled, sinister and cruel, echoing the laughter of childhood friends, now turned against her in nightmarish glee. The alley twisted, shadowy arms appearing from the walls, clawing at them, seeking to pull them back into their bonds of darkness. But Rachel felt determination surge within her, igniting the fire that had kept her going. We're not done yet. She cried, Pushing forward, each heartbeat pulsing in time with her resolve. Just ahead, a faint glimmer pierced through the thick shadows, a doorway, ajar, shedding light into the abyss. The sound of train whistles echoed in the distance, an urgent reminder of escape beyond the darkness. There. She breathed, urging Lisa toward the light. We'll make it. They barreled toward the door, lungs burning, fear propelling them like a force of nature. But as they neared the opening, the laughter crescendoed, rising like a tidal wave. The figures shifted, blocking their path, relentless shadows that twisted with grim delight. Run! Rachel shouted, adrenaline coursing through her as they pushed through the doorway and onto the platform, gasping for breath. But the train station felt eerily deserted, the air thickening with foreboding. There were flickering lights, an ominous hum that signaled something was awry. Where is everyone? Lisa whispered, scanning the empty benches and ticket counters, all cloaked in silence. We just need to get on a train and leave this nightmare. But as Rachel looked back, her heart sank. The shadows followed, merging seamlessly into the platform, transforming the station into a grotesque mockery of safety. We need to get to the other side now. She insisted, urgency snapping her neck around to face the oncoming darkness. The whispers from the shadows turned into frantic shouts of former friends. Come home, Rachel. Why do you resist? It's where you belong. The cacophony crashed against her resolve like waves. Rachel turned her back to the noise and grabbed at an old map tacked onto the wall, its outdated routes offering mere ghosts of potential escape. Look! She called to Lisa, pointing at a southbound train poised on the tracks, its engine humming with life, the door slightly ajar. We can go there. Now! They sprinted towards the train, feet pounding against the grimy platform. With each step, Rachel felt layers peeling away, familiarity morphing into something rotten. Keep moving. She urged, praying they could outrun the darkness that sought to snatch them back, but as they reached the train, the door slammed shut with a deafening thud. No! Please! Rachel pounded against the metal, panic welling as vulnerability crept in. Suddenly, the train's panel flickered, revealing shadowy figures inside, their twisted smiles etched deep into Rachel's memory. It felt as if the train itself had become a dark, hungry creature, waiting to consume them whole. Rachel! Lisa pleaded, voice trembling. What do we do? Break the window! Rachel shouted, her mind racing. If they were trapped, they could fight their way free. She turned back, adrenaline fueling her, but appearing forms leaped through the shadows. One face surged forth. It was Sarah, her lips curling into a malicious smile filled with darkness. Do you think you can escape? Sarah said, her voice dripping with honeyed malice. You are part of us now. No! Rachel screamed. With a sudden burst of strength, she hurled her body against the train's window. The glass shattered into a rain of clear shards, tinkling down like deadly stars. Come on, Lisa. Rachel grabbed her friend's arm, tugging her through the shattered opening. They spilled onto the train's interior, gasping. But shadows coiled around the edges like smoke, intent on swallowing them whole. As the train lurched forward, Rachel felt fresh fear settle, mingling with the static of uncontrolled energy fueling her resolve. She looked around at the dimly lit compartments, afraid to ask if they were truly free. Outside, the dark shadows chased them, pressing against the windows in a twisted game of hide and seek. We'll have to change trains. Rachel decided, scanning for a way forward. Lisa nodded, gripping Rachel's arm tightly. Where to? The train thundered past familiar landmarks, all twisted now through Rachel's terrified lens. She felt the presence behind her, the collective will of those they had loved and lost hot on their tail. Somewhere far from here, Lisa. Rachel declared, determination resurfacing like a lifeline. Somewhere we can break free from the curse. But as the train sped further into the darkness, the laughter crescendoed, melding into a symphony of the shadows that whispered her name, echoing promises of connection and homecoming. With every heartbeat, Rachel's resolve hardened. She would not surrender. There was still a way to break their hold. Glancing back, she caught haunting shadows outpacing them, the whispers rising to a fever pitch. "We'll fight!" she shouted, standing firm amid the chaos. She took a breath and closed her eyes for a brief moment, picturing her childhood before the horror, the laughter, the comfort, the bonds of friendship untarnished by darkness. They would be her armor. As she opened her eyes, Rachel turned to Lisa. "Ready?" "Always," Lisa responded, determination glinting in her eyes. Rachel took a step, then another, pushing toward the front of the train, their resolve igniting a light deeper than shadows could extinguish. Together, they charged forward into the dark, the haunting laughter chasing, yet unable to touch the flame they sparked within. This would end tonight. You need to subscribe now if you want to see how it all unfolds. This is the moment to show your support by smashing that like button now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this heart-pounding conclusion. And don't wait even one more second. Share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this wild, gripping story.